And if I was a super villain in that movie, it would have looked a lot like this. Okay, so my thoughts on No Way Home. I'm going to say that No Way Home is the second best Spider-Man movie of all time. It's not better than Spider-Man 2, only because Spider-Man 2 didn't have as much going for itself, but was still an amazing story and like damn near flawless, I should say. The thing is, the reason why No Way Home is up there, not only because it had a great story, but because it has all the bells and whistles that could go along with a movie like that, because they had Jamie Foxx, they had Alfred Molina, William Dafoe, the Lizard, you know what I'm saying, Sandman coming back. They had all these guys, so it's like, of course, a movie like that is going to be top tier because everything that could have went right with that movie went right. And that movie, honestly, was the only movie in a long time that gave me butterflies during the credits. Like, I'm talking about after the movie was over, I was like, yo, like that really just happened. All right, so I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna say that back in April, I made a video called I had a rant on my channel called Spider-Man Just Go Home, and basically it was a video talking about how much I dislike Tom Holland's, you know, iteration of Peter Parker, right? I do not enjoy Tom Holland as Peter Parker. The last time I watched Far From Home, I skipped it. Oh, Mr. Stark! Mr. Stark said.
Okay, new plan. Y'all take.
And I don't like him. I don't like him. And then Zendaya being his girl in the movies just makes it work. And the same thing almost happened with No Way Home, except because what I didn't like about what Peter Parker did was the fact that he was trying to give these villains a second chance. And I get it, but at the same time, it's like, nah, I agreed with Doctor Strange where it's like, yo, like, just put them back where they belong, because if they don't die, then a lot of things could go wrong, could happen as a result of them not dying. So it almost in a way kind of goes into, you know, Marvel's What If, where I think it was episode 4 or 5 with Doctor Strange and how his girlfriend had to die. She had to die. So it's the same thing for, you know, the story or the timeline to progress in a certain way. The villains had to die. So I feel like I didn't like how I didn't like how, you know, Tom Holland or Tom Holland's version of Peter was basically like, you know, willing to fight Doctor Strange and trap him in the mirror realm just so he could try to help bad guys that ultimately stabbed him in the back. And I knew that was going to happen. I didn't know it was going to happen like that, because it was obvious that Jamie Foxx was going to be the first one to stab him in the back, or to take advantage of the situation, you know, at the first opportunity that he could. But Green Goblin, oh my gosh. Man, round of applause for Green Goblin, first of all, because he was the realest villain in that movie. And I wasn't expecting that. I thought, when I saw these trailers, I thought it was going to be like, he fights Dr. Octopus, Dr. Octopus gets sent home first, and then the same thing with Green Goblin, but then the focal point was going to be Electro, Lizard, and Sandman. That's what I thought, because obviously in all the trailers, that was the setup. We only saw those three at the end. But I love the way they did it, man. Like, it's just flawless movie. I don't have any grievances to, like, honestly, any complaints outside of Peter, because honestly, it was Peter's fault that Aunt May died. It was his fault, because if he hadn't been trying to play, you know, Dr. Phil and shit like that, then she wouldn't have died. And in my first rant from months ago, I said, the first thing I said, I was like, yo, like, he's like a little boy, and then he never has any consequences for any of his ups. It's like, you know, up until this point, every mistake that he made, he always has somebody there to clean up the mess, or to, you know, take the brunt of his mistake. You know what I'm saying? So I thought, like, you know, Doctor Strange would have done that, but the thing is, he didn't. You know, he was pretty much gone for the majority of the movie, after they fought, or they didn't even really fight. It was more so like they were just kind of, it was like a tussle. It wasn't really a fight, but it was still entertaining, you know, nonetheless. Even the fact that, you know, I liked how Peter was able to, you know, like reduce that realm to mathematics, and he was just like this is just math, and then he just kind of figured out a way to trap Doctor Strange there while he was able to pretty much rehabilitate the bad guys. Because I think what he was trying to do with Electro was he was trying to get rid of, to cure him and turn him into a regular person, I think. You know, with that, it wasn't even the arc reactor, because he gave him something else to dissipate the electricity inside of him. But then he was gonna, but he took the arc reactor anyway. It's good to see that, you know, Peter finally, he got consequences, and it actually felt like, it didn't feel like a Disney movie anymore. Because a lot of those movies, like Homecoming and Far From Home, they felt like Disney Channel movies and shit. Like, it felt like an Even Stevens movie, but that just happened to take place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and shit. So I'm glad that he was able to finally come into his own as a superhero and finally know what it actually feels like to be Spider-Man without, like, because there's more to being Spider-Man than just the powers and being able to web sling and do certain things. Like, there's a lot more that goes into that. It's like his struggles, his pain, his relationships, you know, his everyday life. You know, I feel like the first two films, he didn't really get to experience that just because of the fact that, you know, we had, you know, Happy and the MCU, you know, there to pretty much always, like, change his diaper and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? And I at this point, I don't think I'll ever feel good about the whole, you know, Peter Parker or Tom Holland Zendaya relationship. I will never approve of that shit. And if I was a super fucking villain in that movie, it would have looked a lot like this.
The fuck you gonna do, huh?
So, you know, they actually, like, went through some shit as a couple, you know, as a pair. And ultimately, what really hurt me was the fact that it reminded what ended up happening at the end reminded me a lot of Men in Black. I don't know if anybody knows anything about. Oh shit. Anyway, for the sake of the story, I felt more invested in the two of them. And what I mean by that is the notion of her forgetting who he is and him losing her, that bothered me, you know. And it's like you go through so much with somebody and you come to love them, you come to love that person, and that person loves you, and then there comes a point where, like, all of that goes out the window, whether, you know, they die or you know, like, you go your separate ways and shit like that. And then especially at the end, this is when, like, all right, so Doctor Strange was like, if anybody remembers when Doctor Strange said, you know, don't call me Steven, call me Sir. Because Doctor Strange's whole beef with Iron Man was the fact that he felt that Iron Man was not willing to sacrifice himself for the greater good. And in fact, Captain America said that to Iron Man, like, yeah, he said that to Tony in the first Avengers. He was like, yo, you're not the one to make the sacrifice, you know, play. He was like, you're not, you care too much about yourself. And I feel like that's something that Peter struggled with, because he cared more about, like, his own life than the greater good. He was trying to do both, and you can't be both. And I've been said that. I was like, yo, the real Peter Parker knows that you can't be Peter Parker and have a perfect life and then be Spider-Man at the same time, because it's going to come with consequences and it will come with sacrifices. And I think that he finally got that when he walked into the store at the end of the movie, and he could have read the, and I don't know what would have happened. I expected him to read it to her, because I knew how bad he wanted it, and especially when she was like, yo, like, you better come and find me, and the first thing you should say to me is that you love me. I was like, yo, I mean, first of all, if I was Peter, that wouldn't have happened to Zendaya, bro. That wouldn't have happened to my Mary Jane. I would have made it work somehow.
Look at you again. Wouldn't let that shit happen to me, though.
I don't know. I would have did something, because lose a girl like that, fuck, I'd be distraught too. But yeah, and he didn't read it to her. He was just like, yo, you know what? He was like, have a good day or whatever it is that he said. He was like, all right, nah, that's it. That's all I need. And then because he understood that, yo, like, he'd be selfish if he kept trying to be their friend, if he tried to keep them in his life, because for what he's going to become moving forward, they can't be there anymore. Now, I don't know. In every Spider-Man movie, he's got to have a love interest. So I think moving forward, he might get like, you know, like a Gwen Stacy or some shit like that. You know, he will get somebody, but I respected him for that. So I think it was at that moment that I finally accepted Tom Holland as Spider-Man, because prior to that, I didn't. Nah, to me, he was just like a little ass boy, a little kid. You know, Tommy Pickles from the Rugrats. Like, he just wasn't like, yeah, he was like Tommy Pickles with hair. To me, he wasn't like a real superhero, in my opinion, because I didn't have not one thing that I could identify with him with until No Way Home, and that didn't come until pretty much the very end of the movie, because I know what that's like to an extent. I know what that's like, because in Men in Black, basically, in order to join the MIB, you pretty much have to forfeit your existence, so nobody will ever know you exist ever anywhere. And that's pretty much what, you know, he was willing to accept for the greater good, because it's like, yeah, all right, I can keep my girl, but then I'm gonna have, you know, I don't know, hundreds of bad guys, you know what I'm saying, you know, coming into the universe. So it's like, you know what I'm saying, any real superhero would have done the same thing. Even it's like, yo, and that's a tough decision to make. So to see his character finally have to make that tough decision and nobody there, he got my respect for that. Real superheroes do that. That's what real superheroes do. And it bothered me too, because him and Happy was like his uncle or like his older brother. And then when he went to Aunt May's grave, he didn't even know who he was. He was like, oh, how did you know her? And then he was like, oh, through Spider-Man. And then he was like, yeah, me too. And then he was like, take care of yourself, kid. And then like that was it. And I was like, wow. I don't even think the Avengers are gonna even remember who he is. So now he's starting from ground zero, like little ass apartment. You know what I'm saying? Like, just no one knows who he is. So, and that's good to see. I think what'll happen is the symbiote will kind of, if they're gonna do that in the next movie, which I don't think they should, but if they do that, the symbiote will kind of be his escape and kind of compensate for what he will lost, because what we know the Venom symbiote to be is something that always makes the host feel good. You know, it's like an escape. It's like, yeah, you might not have any family or friends, but you have the power of the symbiote that like is almost intoxicating, and it's hard to let go of. So I feel like maybe if they do that next time, that'll be something that you know, they'll explore about his character, him finally kind of giving in to something like that. So when they say that this is the most ambitious superhero film ever made, I would agree. I would agree, because for them to get all these moving pieces, you know, important pieces at that, together for one movie like this, it's crazy. It's crazy. Now, when Andrew Garfield walked in, straight goosebumps, man. That crowd audience, crazy. Crazy. This is definitely gonna be a movie I'm gonna see like probably like 2 or 3 more times, because I don't think I can wait for it to come out on streaming or DVD for me to just experience again. I have to see it again. Until I walk out of the theater, I'm like, you know what, I'm good for a while, then I'll stop seeing it. But until then, I will be seeing this movie, you know, a couple of more times. But when he walked in, it was a little awkward at first, and I was kind of like, you know, okay. But then, you know, because the way that he comes in, he walks in with Zendaya's character and Ned. I think I forgot that fat kid's name, but I think Ned, you know, Peter's friend, and who else? Who else was in the room? And I think, yeah, like his grandma or some shit like that. It was a little awkward, but it was good to see him. And then when Peter shows up, that, like, just the amount of nostalgia, just, man, fucking, like, through the roof and shit. And then, goddamn, what else happened? And then, the part that they really got to shine, in my opinion, was when, because they were looking for Peter at that time. And then when they finally found him, Peter, and this is, I was like, literally at that moment, if he had sent them home or some shit like that, which I knew he wasn't, but I didn't like how he was brushing them off like, oh, you guys can't understand. And it's like, bro, are you serious? Like, they've been through more than what he's been through. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they've been through way more than he has. So for him to like initially shut them down, and I feel like he did that out of arrogance because he's like a lot younger than they are. You know what I'm saying? But once, you know, they opened up, like when Andrew talked about Gwen, I was like, yo, like they can literally pick up these movies right where they left off, and people will go and watch them. Like people would dead ass go and watch Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies right now. If they wanted to do that, they could literally have they could literally have a whole Spider-Verse and then like cross them over again if they wanted to. And that's just a testament to how like good of an actor Andrew is, because when he was talking about her, I felt that. And then we all knew that when MJ started falling, that Andrew was gonna go save her, and he got that second chance. And then the crazy thing is, he was fake triggered by that. And then he was talking about like basically how like he had to, you know, like adjust to, you know, his new self, like his bitter, you know, angrier self. This is why Spider-Man is by far, in my opinion, the best superhero. He's the most relatable. Outside of Batman, he's the most relatable. Because to me, it's Batman. I mean, no, it's Spider-Man, Batman, and Black Panther, in my opinion. That are my favorite superheroes. In that order. Because I could, out of all of them, I could relate to, you know, Spider-Man the most. And the fact that their disappearances were so nuanced, and it wasn't just like, oh, you know, just a little cameo. Nah. And then when they had that, when they were swinging together and they were literally like pulling each other, I was like, bro, this is crazy. Like the crowd, I went crazy. The crowd went crazy, man. It's just like, it's just one of those things that like you're just glad to like see. You're just like glad to be around for. You know what I'm saying? So you know, it just makes me excited to finally see, you know, him really finally become Spider-Man. And I think his suit, you know, is a lot more like theirs. So I think he changed his suit to look like theirs, because during his final swing, his suit had a lot more blue in it. Like before, it was more like blue and like red and black, you know, for the most part. But you got to see a lot more blue. So he's finally becoming who he's supposed to be. You know, not Iron Boy Jr., you know what I'm saying? Like real Peter Parker. You know, a real Spider-Man, a real superhero. You know, not somebody else's sidekick, not the do-boy. So it's like if we do see him in another Avengers film, we'll see him in a more mature light. Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see how, you know, the Spider-Verse, you know, starts to develop, and the new villains that we'll get, because we're definitely gonna see, you know, Morbius. We're gonna see Venom now for sure. I think in the MCU. So what they did was they had Tom Hardy in the MCU, but it's like he was there, but he wasn't really like part of what was going on. And it's like just before they were like, oh, let's go find Spider-Man, he went back to where he was from, but a little piece of the symbiote stayed. So I feel like it's either gonna get to Peter first, or it's gonna get to that universe's version of Eddie Brock first, because it's not Flash Thompson. It won't be that fucking dweeb, but it'll definitely get to him somehow. And when that does that, or shit, they might fuck around and get Black Cat. You know, who knows? But you know, I'm very excited to see moving forward. So I kind of pretty much went from despising his character to finally like relating to him and appreciating him for, you know, multiple different things. You know, and lastly, Jamie Foxx says to, I think Jamie Foxx says to one of them, I think he said to Andrew, he was like, oh, there has to be a black Spider-Man out there. So he was, yeah. He was like, he said, oh, you know, he was like, I thought you were black. And then Andrew was like, yeah, nah. And then he was like, there's got to be a black Spider-Man out there somewhere. So, yeah, anybody from Marvel, you watching this, you guys need a black Spider-Man, come holler at your boy. Come holla at your boy. If you guys need, you know, if y'all need a boyfriend for Zendaya's character or some shit like that, come holla at your boy. You guys need another Black Panther? Come holla at your boy. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, so I think those are all my thoughts on Spider-Man, although unconcise.